the UK needs a united right-wing party. This is something that's been bothering me for some time, and I'm not blaming you because you are an alternative right-wing party, a part of one, but there are lots of these around, and this is a subject that I just think needs to really be brought to the table, and the reasons that are holding back the uniting of the political right in the United Kingdom need to be hammered out, gotten past, so we can actually have some conservative opposition.
Well, I mean, what I would say about that, I mean, to be honest, is when I started the Heritage Party, there was nothing going on. There was UKIP had, they collapsed. They weren't doing anything. The Brexit Party had deactivated. So I was still an elected member of the London Assembly at that time. So I thought, well, I'm in a position to do something. So I started the Heritage Party, and I was like, I created the Heritage Party to fill that space. But it was very disappointing that instead of everyone coming to join me, within a couple of days, there was this Reclaim Party launched and said, we're going to compete against what you're doing. Yeah. And then a few weeks later, the Reform Party was launched, and they were like, we're going to compete against what you're both doing. And then UKIP sort of reactivated as well. And then there was another couple of parties activated and just set up.
Yeah.
So why didn't you come and join me? I was in a position to actually build a right-wing movement in this space that, that UKIP couldn't fill anymore because its day is done. And we could all be united. But, different people set up different things, and now there is the case where some of them are saying, well, we are not going to work with any of you. We are going to be the dominant brand. We're going to squash everybody else. And they need to, well, we wouldn't have a place with them, So that is the situation, unfortunately.
Well, we'll go through some events that have happened recently that have really provoked me to want to say this. But before we do, if you want to support us, go over to our merch store, which is merch.lotus.com, and check out our merch. We've got loads of t-shirts, sweaters, and various other things. And of course, this is because we are otherwise demonetized, and it helps us keep the lights on. Much appreciated. So I think it's interesting that Reform did poorly in the local elections recently, which is really disappointing because the overall turnout for the local elections was very low, wasn't it?
It was about 32% overall, I think. Yeah, so very low. Yeah,
Maddeningly
less than a third. Yeah. 2 in 3 people didn't bother to vote.
Yeah, and this allowed the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party to absolutely smash the Conservatives in the local elections. And I went through a bunch of the results in Swindon, actually, because they got Labour councillors in the major seats. And it was literally just hundreds of votes. It was a couple of hundred votes. And it was because I think that the Conservative voters just didn't want to turn up.
That's exactly what happened, isn't it? It was not that Labour and the Lib Dems, so the Lib Dems may have got a few more in some places, but Labour, they didn't get any more votes. Just the Conservative vote dropped precipitously.
Yeah.
Because they're so appalling that their own voters don't want to vote for them because they're not a Conservative party anymore. They've got the name, but they're fake Conservatives.
That's exactly the point. And I mean, I went through a bunch of the stats, and some of them were winning on like 1,600 votes. And it's like in a 10,000, 12,000 constituency, voting constituency. And it's like, how is this possible? And it's possible because literally the Conservatives just didn't bother turning up, exactly as you were saying, right? But the thing that I think is most disappointing is in parties like the Reform Party, where they are failing to capitalise on the Conservatives' phenomenal weakness here, right? There is actually a massive Conservative constituency that is simply disengaging from the political process because they don't feel represented. And the Reform Party, and honestly all the other parties, are failing to take up the standard, raise the banner and say, no, look, this is our, these are the people you need to vote for to get into office, to start having pro-patriotic messaging and actions taken.
Look, I mean, I can really just speak for the Heritage Party.
Sure.
We had 65 candidates standing, which for our third year is a really good number of people, all over the country, from Devon to Kent to Lancashire and North Lincolnshire. We had people all over the country. And where people heard about us, they loved our message, they loved our manifesto. But we've still got the issue of trying to get known. Because we're very new party. You know, we only launched, you know, just under 3 years ago, as I said. So we with very little money, with very little publicity from the mainstream, deliberately, of course. Whereas they are pushing reform all the time. You know, you're showing something from the Telegraph there. You know, they have PR agency and they can get, you know, things placed in the national media, so people see them more. But they didn't do any better than the Heritage Party did.
They did.
In terms of their vote share,
they did very poorly, actually. They were expecting, I think, to do quite well, and they only got 6 councillors, despite fielding candidates in 500 seats, and of course, despite the profound Conservative weakness.
And I must say, sorry to interrupt. Those 6 councillors used to be UKIP councillors back in the day, Alan Graves and so on, in 2 seats in South West Derby.
Yeah, so it's not a new party that's come up. It's the existing goodwill that's been built up.
They've got a personal vote in that area. They've been they were UKIP councillors, then Brexit Party councillors, now Reform councillors, who have been known in those 2 wards in Alveston, in Derby, for over 10 years. So that's not the work of Reform that's got those 6 councillors. It's their own personal standing among their neighbourhoods.
And that I think is fundamentally the problem with parties like Reform and Reclaim. And I say this as supporters of all of these things, right? Like with the Trump and DeSantis scuffle. I literally don't care which one I support. I'm going to support them all because they're all, as far as I can tell, you know, alternatives to the lib-lab con 3-cheeked arse that's controlling this country.
I might add the Green Party to that as well.
They've only got 1 MP, so
that's true.
I don't really consider them important enough to mention. And then some Bryson, of all places. But yeah, this wasn't a great result, which is disappointing. Then you have another party called the SDP, the Social Democratic Party, who they have 2 councillors now, which and they have quite an interesting manifesto. A bunch of, again, honestly, right. This is the thing about the plurality of right-wing parties, is they're essentially all with the same message, right? It's like a more sort of protectionist economic message, a more socially conservative economic message. We need to reduce immigration. We need to make sure that the country is run in the interests of the people in the country and not for foreign interests or global interests or whatever it is. And these are all very similar messages that we can all get behind. And so that's what makes the fractured nature of the right-wing political scene in Britain so damn frustrating, actually. Right?
It is like I was saying, you know, why didn't everyone come and join what I was doing? You know, why did people set up their own things, and then people are still talking about setting up new parties to compete with what's already there? But one of them's folded. They had For Britain, run by Anne-Marie Waters, and she tried to do her thing, and she's you know. Wound that up now, and then she's joined UKIP, so there's 1 fewer there. So you know that's you know what one thing to which is interesting to note. But I mean, all I can say is in a way I would agree with you. Why didn't people come and join what I'm doing? And I was there when no one else was doing it. But
well, the next interesting thing in this regard is Andrew Bridgen joining the Reclaim Party. Because, of course, he was expelled by the Conservatives under very suspicious pretenses, shall we say, comparing the COVID vaccinations to the Holocaust, which I'm not, for YouTube's sake, saying I endorse, but it is not an anti-Semitic statement, obviously, and we'll get into his lawsuit in a minute. So if you go to the next one, he did a press conference with Lawrence Fox, which I watched, which I thought was very good, and I agree. And so now Reclaim has as many MPs as the Green Party. But the problem, again, with this is, A, why the Reclaim Party, why not the Reform Party? And Richard Tice initially essentially rejected Andrew Bridgen because he was controversial on the subject of the vaccines. It's like, okay, but you know, I'm not going to go into the subject now, but like...
I totally supported what he's been saying for the last few months.
But for YouTube's sake, we're not going to go into it.
Okay. Well,
just because the rules are as the rules are. But the problem, though, is now we have the Reform Party, which is Tice and has the looming spectre of the political superstar that is Nigel Farage, somewhere just in the shadow of him.
He's the major shareholder of the Reform UK
and even if he's
PLC,
not,
isn't he?
If he's not, exactly. And if he's not directly involved it's still his brand. Everyone still knows it. It's still got the logo from the Brexit Party. But now you have Reclaim, who have an actual MP. And so you've got these two centres of power that are now just competing with each other, that should be competing with the Conservative Party. But instead, they've split their energies and now they're against each other. And this, again, with they've got no ground game. And so the places like people like the SDP, who do have a ground game, and that's how they've been getting their ground, and UKIP, probably still have something of a ground game. There's this scattering of all of the necessary components. So you've got Lawrence Fox and Richard Tice, who have the Westminster game, but you've got nothing in the Shires. Those things are separate to the political entity that should be all connected and joined up with ligaments, as it were. And so this is why I think the right is getting absolutely nowhere, because they haven't got one consistent brand, they haven't got one consistent message, and there's no support from the other parts that should be necessarily supporting and amplifying. There should be word of mouth on the ground doing the local thing, and then there should be the centralised thing in Westminster with an MP doing the public-facing national thing. And it's not happening. And so the Labour Party aren't gaining any ground. That's the thing. It's the Conservative Party have just lost a massive share of votes that isn't being picked up by a single united Conservative Party that is not the capital C Conservative Party.
Well, you see, you've got Reform here, as you mentioned quite a lot, with the sort of newspaper pieces. They think that they are the natural heir to that side of the politics. What I would call the true conservative right, whatever.
Sure.
But they're not gaining anything.
No.
But they've got, particularly Richard Tice has got quite an arrogant attitude of not wanting to work with other people. So,
but this is clearly a kind of rake that he's standing on that's smacking him in the face, because for all of the media attention that you can gain, and for all of the connections you may have in Westminster, or the reputational legacy of Nigel Farage, it's clear that you need a local ground game. And if you say that you're above this and you intend to come from the top down, well, as you can see, unless you have an amazingly persuasive message, which Reform aren't articulating, then it doesn't work.
Well, they don't have a full manifesto, and neither does Reclaim.
No, that's true.
They've got a couple of bullet points. We do in the Heritage Party. I know when I was on with you a few months ago, we went through the full manifesto, which is 30 pages long, and it's got sections on, all areas of policy, from, national sovereignty to transport to the environment to energy, and it's very well thought out. So I think we've got the manifesto, which, and these other people, they copy what we say. They copy it word for word sometimes and tweet it out, which is very frustrating.
But this is precisely my point. It's all of you should be in the same party because you're fulfilling different functions of a political party. Like the Heritage Party, and the thing is, of the branding, I like the Heritage Party the most, right? Because it speaks in and of itself. The word speaks to richness and depth and feeling, right? It's really about. I want a party of the Shires, that recognise old England, old Britain, that appreciates the warmth and depth of this country. Whereas Reform is a very thin name. Reclaim is a very thin name. And it's got this shiny corporate logo. It's that turns me off instantly, But the people in it, I think, probably are good people and are doing good things. I know Lawrence and Andrew, they're good people, they're doing good things. I don't know Richard Tice, but I'm sure, or Nigel Farage, but I'm sure they're decent people and they're doing good things.
Ben Habib is a good man.
Ben Habib's
I like
great.
Ben Habib, yeah.
Really good. I was able to promote him on Twitter the other day because he came out on GB News, I think, having a smashing little speech on GB News. But all of these things should be integrated. I want the Heritage Party Manifesto. I want, Andrew Bridgen and Lawrence Fox and Nigel Farage and Richard Tice. I want the ground game of all of them. I want them to be together under a nicely, a rich name, a rich brand that I can really just go out and hammer every damn day. To 300,000 people on Twitter, to the 6-7 million people we get watching on YouTube, to the, God knows how many hundreds of thousands on Rumble we get. We got a large audience, and I really want to be able to just say, no, these are our guys. They're our guys working in our interest. But it seems that it's ego that's stopping this from coming together, some sort of robot constructing itself. It's insufferable to watch. as someone who's not involved, manually in any of these.
Politically, I guess,
as a commentator who just wants the best for everyone. I haven't got a personal prejudice against any of these people. It's insufferable watching the egos stopping it from coming together. Because, like you say, you've got a good manifesto, and I liked your manifesto. Lawrence Fox has got access to finance, and he has an MP. Richard Tice has access to the Westminster media apparatus. And the SDP and other local parties have got a ground game. What are we doing?
They do in the north, particularly Yorkshire. So but they're not round the rest of the country.
Sure,
maybe.
but that's still it's something that we could, if we had a united front here, we could say, look, just get a couple of their guys to advise us in the south how to set up those things, and we could set those up. We could organise it. We could get it done. But while everything is so shattered and disparate, none of this is going on. The ideas, the people, the goodwill, it's all here. It's just that it seems there are a few egos at the top that we just need to have broken through and just be like, look, you've just got to deal with it,
Yeah, people come. Yeah, you're not the first person
I'm
to say that to me.
I don't think it's your fault. You seem to be completely open to some sort of confederation of parties, should we call it?
Yeah, the thing is, how do you get people to work together? It's like, if we could all come together and agree, I will stand in these seats, they will stand in those seats, they will stand in those seats, and sort of, divvy up the seats so we don't stand against each other. That might be a way of working together. I can't see everybody coming together as one party, with some of the people you've got in some of the other parties at the moment. Someone like, Ben Habib, maybe, there's possibility of working with him because he's much more amenable. And I think he's far more intelligent and politically switched on. He's very, very good politically. And I don't think he's in it for his own selfish personal ambition. I think he's in it because he cares genuinely about the country. So he's like a whole level above some of the other people who are leaders in these parties at the moment.
So I think you're being diplomatic, and I think that, and I've heard from many people, it's the Reform Party themselves who are unprepared to sit around and negotiate and coalesce with other parties, it seems, right? And I'm not going to make you commit to that or anything like that, but that's what I've heard. And again, I'm not casting any shade, but would it be worth then ignoring them and then, talking to Lawrence Fox, talking to the SDP, talking to English Democrats or any of the other smaller parties, having some sort of... Because, you had a conversation about this on GB News, didn't you?
There was a conversation, I think, when Calvin Robinson tried to get everybody together in the studio.
So I've discussed this with Calvin.
It kind of was a bit chaotic, and I didn't want to do that publicly. I have spoken to people behind the scenes about certain things. I'm not going to, divulge what I've said publicly, but this is also a problem. There's conversations going on, and then some people are blabbermouths, and then they put it all over social media. Oh, I spoke to this person. Oh, I didn't speak to that person. They wouldn't speak to me. They said this, but then they did that. And it's like, some of those people, you can't trust them because you don't know what they're going to divulge that's private in the public sphere. So you have to have that level of trust with people to be able to engage with them. So this also is a problem.
But all I'm saying, and I'm going to keep hammering it, is that there needs to be the beginning of a knitting together of these different strata of politics in this country so we can have a genuine right-wing party that we can genuinely commit to. Because at the moment
you can commit to the Heritage Party,
but that's because you're the leader of the Heritage Party, and people who support Reclaim
and we have
or Reform,
a fantastic manifesto.
You do. No, and you are right. Your manifesto is definitely superior to the manifestos of Reform and Reclaim, but they have direct mainstream media access and an MP, right? And so it's all well and good having these separate parts. But the thing becomes more than the sum of its parts once it's put together. And until that happens, I honestly think it'll just be Labour and the Conservatives ruining this country forever. So as a quick end point on that, sorry, I just want to say Andrew Bridgen is suing Matt Hancock for calling him an anti-Semite, which I completely agree with. You should definitely sue Matt Hancock. And he's running a crowdfunding campaign. He's already got 45,000 out of 250,000 gold, which is fantastic. But... if you want, it's on democracy3.org, but I'm sure if you just Google Andrew Bridgen crowdfunder, you'll be able to find it. Do go and throw him a fiver, frankly. It's not a huge amount of money. And it will be important if he wins because it will stop these kind of slanderous and libelous allegations from ruining people's careers. And that's really what we need, especially when it's a good bloke like Andrew Bridgen, who has stepped out of the mainstream orthodoxy to die on a point of principle, right? Even if you don't agree with him, it's right for him to have done this, and he shouldn't have been treated the way he's been treated.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Symposium series, this episode on the Politics of Aristotle, Part 2. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you, and goodbye.